Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. Hey, thanks for joining Parental Advisory. Anthony, today we're talking about tax court.
Today we're talking about tax court, and this is something I didn't even know we were going to do this topic today. But I think on Friday I just started rattling off a bunch of things about why tax court might not be the thing people think it is, and then my dad came down and then he started chewing your ear off.
Yeah, and just listening, I started taking notes, and I was like, "Let's do it."
Yeah, I think so. So I think we're going to have a pretty good episode today.
Okay.
Just talking about tax court.
So what we want to start with tax court is the basics. Why would you perhaps go to tax court? A few of the things that you can appeal in tax court are what?
Filing of a lien.
Okay.
And then a collection if the IRS is filing an improper levy or not agreeing to your reasonable collection alternative, whether that's an installment agreement. Currently, non-collectible status is actually something we fought for and won in tax court, and even installment agreements.
Okay.
Also, when this is big in tax court, a lot of times spent challenging assessments by the IRS of particular, during an audit or something like that.
Yep.
So tax court can be helpful there.
So if you've been issued an IRS 90-day letter, you literally have 90 days from the date on the letter, not the date you got it, to respond to petition if you want to go to tax court. It's important to note if you get that, you shouldn't just ignore it. It's not one of those letters you should leave unopened, because if you don't respond to the IRS at all, you're basically saying, yes, I agree with you, and then that is it. There's no fighting it after that.
Yeah, and make sure when you're counting, you're counting your days correctly too. I'll be talking about my story of when I didn't and what happened there.
91 days.
Oh, doesn't that count? Yeah, I'm like, well.
90.5. So the case is first sent to the Office of Appeals, at which point the IRS can offer to settle.
Yes.
And you're saying, did you say about 90% are settled before even going to tax court?
Most cases, and if you're doing this right, tax court is usually never needed. If you're doing tax law correctly, usually you can avoid tax court. There's a few situations where you do go, and you go where the IRS, for some unknown reason, usually the IRS Office of Appeals is where we get something reasonable, where somebody, pretty talented would come like, oh my God, what are they doing here? Yeah, you're right. We agree with you. Something like that. Or it's something where the IRS Appeals officer will say, okay, we see your point, but look, I'm looking at the law that I have in front of me. The law I have in front of me says I have to rule this way. So I don't have any justification. Yes, I have to look at risks of litigation when I deny your request. But in this case, the risks of litigation are very low, so I'm going to deny you. And they might even say, hey, good luck with your petition. They might even say that. So those are usually where we've seen it, where the IRS is just, and for some reason, appeals didn't catch it. They're just acting crazy, or it's a push, and you're willing to push.
Got it. Now, there's a couple different kinds of tax court. There's small tax court. That's for any cases $50,000 and under. Large tax court is for obviously anything over $50,000. And with those, you need to know that neither side can appeal the decision. So once you go to tax court, that's it with small and large tax court. Yeah.
I believe with large you can appeal.
Oh, with a large you can.
I believe so.
Okay, we'll double check on that.
Yeah, we've never had to do that, because usually if you're gonna, usually you can appeal, or at least you can go to district court. But your mechanism is a little bit different. We've never had to do that. We've never appealed tax court decisions. So I guess, most of the times we never need to go to tax court, and the few times we go, it works out.
And small and large tax court are they're more administrative courts.
Right. And it's not, if you look at the Constitution, there's the Article 3 of the Constitution, which is the federal judiciary. And so this is where things do get a little complicated, because this is really something of an executive administrative agency, or half hybrid between Article 1 and 2 of Congress and the president. It's really in between. And this is where most law is done in the world. 98% of all law is done administratively. The whole idea that lawyers go to court, that's a very outdated model. Most attorneys are doing something with an administrative agency.
Right.
And tax court is an administrative agency. There's a judge, and it's in the federal building, the same federal building as the federal court, but it's actually a different branch of it. And that's where some of the appeals rules gets a little crazy to see which one you actually go to.
And there's no jury, so you don't walk into small and large tax court expecting to see.
And then and also the court isn't really there all the time. It's a rotating thing where the judge is there for a week, so they put their docket and they got to run through everything. So it's really not. Don't expect like this big sort of like deal where you're going back again and again, and they want to wrap things up.
Yeah,
they really have to. So that's kind of a benefit, because you do. This is the thing. Why you go to tax court over? Why would you take an administrative court when you have federal court? You have the right to sue the IRS in federal court. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, a few problems there. In order to get into federal court, you have to be claiming. You have to usually have a claim for refund. That means you have to pay your taxes. Now sue the federal government. Hey, I don't owe you those taxes. Well, usually that's kind of the problem, right? Like you don't have the money, so you're really not going to get in there. And then federal litigation, it gets you're at $50,000 in a few months. So I mean, it just gets incredibly expensive. So some for large corporations, they're going to go ahead and do that. But for even wealthy taxpayers, it's just not a good use, because now, I mean, you've just paid them everything. Now you got to hope and pray after spending a huge amount in attorney fees in federal district court that you prevail. So you really want to have a strong case, and that's why tax court is better. You don't need to pay your taxes to get into tax court. The whole idea is like, I don't want to pay my taxes.
You pay $60 to go to court. That's it.
Yeah.
U.S. District Court, though, there is a jury.
There's a jury.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. And you could probably, I think you might want to, in some cases, you want to get around a jury because that could just be a bunch of time. Use a judge as a finder of fact, because that's a lot of billable hours there.
Well, even with small and large tax court, it can be very time consuming from the time you file your petition and you're waiting and finally you hear it's your day to go, and then you wait. You can wait, months and months just to hear what they decided. The debt on the tax debt continues to
accrue interest
the entire time.
That's right.
So that sucks.
Yeah, and also remember we talked about the statute of the CSEDs, your collection statute expiration dates. The IRS has a 10-year clock. Well, when you file a tax court petition, that stops the clock.
Oh.
Yeah, because that debt is not collectible. So the IRS says, well, if we can't collect on it because of some reason, then we're going to stop it. So, sometimes, people get emotional and say, I'm going to just sue them in tax court. And it's like, well, you better have a claim, because it's not a riskless proposition. Even if you're doing it yourself for free or you're hiring somebody for free, you could still really harm yourself. And people often do. And the tax court tries to make it hard for you to hurt yourself, because I see people do it. People get caught, and I think in our next part we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But people sort of get caught in a rut, and they get defensive, and they do the wrong things and say the wrong things and end up harming themselves. So you want to be careful about what you're going to do. I would not, people do represent themselves, some successfully. It does happen. But oftentimes, every day there's a new pro se, someone representing themselves, decision where it's just basically, it's a cut and paste of every other pro se litigant who lost. They failed to exhaust their administrative remedies or, have a claim the relief can be placed upon. Just time and time again it happens. And it's just they are lawyerly rules. Yes, it's an administrative body, but they do follow a lot of rules of evidence, and administrative law requires that you exhaust your administrative remedies to get the higher administrative remedy, because tax court is an administrative remedy.
And something else you said that really caught my ear during the conversation with your dad is the best ideas are never published. The best decisions are never published.
That's right. The best decisions are never published. Now, is this where I tell my story?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah. All right. So this is, I think, enough time.
Many years ago.
My dad and I started this IRSMedic in 2006. So I think enough years have gone on where I could be honest about what happened. Okay. So that 90 days. Yeah, that's 90 days. It's not 91, I can tell you. Because I did file a tax court petition a day late. This was for a client. We had a pretty tough, and the tax court petition we're going to file, the grounds were terrible. we were right on the substance, but our procedure, he had the wrong form, and his employer refused to give him the right form. But he qualified for this treatment. But we couldn't get the IRS to see our way. So we're like, all right, well, I'm like, well, we'll file a tax court petition to see maybe if we can get the IRS to go our way. I didn't have a lot of faith in it. He wanted to do it because what else? What else are we going to do? The money at stake was like $500,000. So, it seemed like a cost benefit. We lost our appeal with the Office of Appeals, and we lost it hard. So it wasn't the greatest one, but, we decided to do it anyway. So anyway, I'm late, and it gets back. Yeah, you're too late. And I'm like, oh my God.
By a day, literally.
By a day. There's no relief. There's a few things you can screw up permanently when you're doing tax representation. One of them is missing a tax court petition deadline. The other one is being late for a claim for refund. Those are the ones there's no coming back from, except, right? What's that? The Princess Bride, there's dead and not really dead.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's not really dead. That was my dad.
Yep.
I came in and I told him, I said, guess what I did? I'm a day late. And he's like, okay.
It's a good thing he's a calm guy.
Yeah, he's like, all right. So this is what he does. He's like, all right, there's always a way. Okay. And I'm just like, just like, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life. I got to call a client to say I screwed up the thing that you should never screw up. I screwed it up. So he calls around. He's like, all right, I'm going to call somebody at IRS counsel. Okay. So he actually calls, the opposing counsel at tax court. Just like we don't have to, hey, Dave Parent, I dealt with your case before. Hey, so I got a little problem here. And he goes, he says he did it. I filed a tax court petition a day late here. Or you might have said the royal we. And he said, we got anything we could do here? And then the counsel's like, there's no way. There's no way. It's you're dead. But he goes, tell me about your issue. My dad explains the issue. He goes, you know where you should really go? Go to the taxpayer advocate on this one. Tell him this, and see if you can get someone, to hear your side of the story.
Wow. And
so my dad says, yeah, let's go to the taxpayer advocate. So then I go into, damage control mode, trying to explain to the client, like, we're just going to take a little bit of a different course. Longer. Looking at things, tax court's really a dead end for you, and taxpayer advocate. So it took 2 years. And my dad massaging the taxpayer advocate, and I had a little hand in that too. Ultimately, we had that $500,000 swing in our favor. The taxpayer advocate went our way. And it was really far better of a solution because tax court really would have been a loss. I'm like 98%. I could kind of just imagine, yep, nope, didn't do it. She just got the employer to give him the right form. But here the taxpayer was like, yeah, we can see your point here. Yeah, it makes sense. Like, yeah, all right, they're not doing it, but really he is. Okay, gotcha. And it was like that. Okay, well, let me, it's going to take me some time. I got to do a manual override of the system. Yeah, do that manual override, man. And I'm like, oh my God, my dad saved
your life.
Right. I mean, but there's so many beautiful lessons in there. Okay. Even when you're dead, you're not dead. Don't stop dancing. Just keep going. There's something there. That's what you have to do if you don't screw up, you're not alive. You're lying. That everybody screws up. You want to have systems, and we adjusted our system so that thing won't happen again. And then just sort of ask around it, and there it is. And this is sort of how important it is to exhaust your administrative remedies, right? Taxpayer advocate wasn't even a remedy, but we exhausted it, and it worked.
And it worked out better.
It worked out better than through our failure, we got the better result. And boy, that was a lesson. I mean, there was a lesson, and that's why a lot of times people come in and they'll say, "Yeah, I want you to file a tax court petition for me." And I'll say, "Okay, well, show me what you got." And I'm looking at this. I'm like, "No. I'm not going to do a tax court petition. You're going to lose. You haven't exhausted your administrative remedy, and you like we can get another bite at the apple. Why don't you do this? I'm going to do this. I'm going to, we're going to keep this down at the lower level, and we're going to just put things in a different way for the IRS to understand." And that works. And that usually works. That's always worked for us. I mean, every time we've intentionally said, "Hey, look, we think tax court's a loser for you. You're not going to get the treatment you think you're going to get. You're really wasting your time. Let's go back. We need to give the IRS different facts. It's like they're giving you this result based on these facts. These facts suck. Change the facts. Here, these are the facts.
Yep. And, it takes a whole team of people here to get it right.
Yep.
And when people go in and they want to represent themselves,
God.
I think it's important to remember that the burden of proof is going to lie solely on your shoulders to prove that the IRS is wrong. And that's a huge burden.
And it's you against the world. And, they're there all the time. They know everything. This is your first time in there. Yeah, I would never want, it just sounds like a nightmare.
No. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about what to do in tax court and more importantly, maybe what not to do in tax court. We'll be back right after this. The IRS takes us serious because we are serious.
We've earned our reputation and we will protect our reputation.
The IRS knows exactly who we are.
We're full-time advocates, not part-time middlemen.
We are creative problem solvers, not dull form fillers.
We're lawyers, the others, they're not.
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent and Parent, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. And we're back on Parental Advisory. We're talking today about tax court. We went over some tax court basics, why you may go. And now what we'd like to talk about is 3 things to know about tax court. Number 1, we're recommending perhaps you probably don't want to get your information from tax protesters online on YouTube. If you do choose to do that, that's fine. But don't use that information in tax court. That's basically saying you're bringing what they call a frivolous claim to tax court. And the IRS.gov has an entire page titled The Truth About Frivolous Tax Arguments, several pages, as a matter of fact. A couple highlights. I thought this was a great quote. This document is not intended to provide an exhaustive list of frivolous tax arguments. Merely because a frivolous argument is not included in this document doesn't mean it's not frivolous. What a great way to cover your ass. We're going to list everything here, but just in case we don't list everything, whatever you say is also going to be listed. Some arguments included the filing of a tax return is voluntary. Taxpayers can reduce their federal income tax by filing a 0 return. Taxpayer is not a person as defined by the Internal Revenue Code, thus is not subject to the federal income tax laws, and taxpayers are entitled to a refund of the Social Security taxes paid over their lifetime. These are just a few examples of some of the frivolous arguments the IRS talks about. And did you have any additional ones you wanted to mention?
There's always the original issue, discount. Only your wages are not taxable, only your earned income, or vice versa. It goes on, and Fifth Amendment claims, Fourth Amendment claim, Ninth Amendment claims, 10th Amendment claims. And this is where I always try to explain myself, yet it's, tax protesters don't want to hear me. They don't want to hear what I'm actually saying. They just imagine what I'm saying. They're not picking up the nuance. So here goes. This whole idea the IRS has about the frivolous tax arguments, this is their explanation, because you actually read the court's decision. Okay, so this is where I'm going to be on the side of the tax protester, okay? Mm-hmm. Going to be on your side, because what's really annoying about the IRS and what's really annoying about the judges, this is what they say. When you bring an argument, they're saying you're frivolous because you're frivolous.
Yes, exactly.
Why is it frivolous? Because it's frivolous. That's a tautology, and it's really, really annoying. It's like if someone's bringing a claim, if it's so easy to dismiss it, then just say it. If it's so easy, just say you're wrong because this. Mm-hmm. Okay.
You're wrong because you're wrong.
You're wrong because of a reason, not because you're wrong because we said so.
Right.
So that's what drives me nuts about it, because when you look at, when you look at a lot of the constitutional claims to the unconstitutionally of a personal income tax, look, I find those claims persuasive. I find them very persuasive of how the income tax violates pretty much all of the Constitution. You just can't. It's like either you have a tax on personal income or you have a limited government. Pick one. Mm-hmm. That's really it. They cannot exist together. So that I do agree with the end results of taxpayers, but however the reasoning just stinks. And they go to the same old wells of hearing what they want to hear, the echo chamber of Winston Schraub's type people who just talk in circles, and then people who you buy your tax protester program from. Hey, get this program. We'll show you how not to pay taxes. How about this? Just don't pay taxes. I mean, you said there's no law, so hey, why do I need to pay $500 not to pay what I don't have to pay? You're right? I don't get that. Those people are really scammy, and I mean, they're really nasty. When the 3 things never to say the IRS, I have that video up.
Yes.
That's very popular on YouTube. And I mean, that's just loaded with comments just from people attacking me, you're part of the IRS, and then the comments are all these frivolous arguments. They're all coming up. So I always see, when I check the comments on there, I do check them, and there's a lot of hate. YouTube is full of the world's worst people. Some do have some supporters on there, but I like it. I just like seeing it. And also, there's 210,000 views, I think now, which is
you're YouTube famous. I think
yeah,
officially.
I'm YouTube famous. It's a horrible video, but it is the greatest trolling around because people do have to feel compelled to leave an argument. So anyway, the thing is, and my dad was mentioning that he was up at tax court one day, and he saw somebody getting up there starting to make one of these bullshit arguments. And the court says, do you really want to do this? Are you sure? And the judge says, you know what? There's some of those guys in the suits in the back there. Just take a little time, go talk to one of those. And, my dad was back there with other attorneys who did not represent the IRS. And they're saying, cut the crap. Okay? Don't do that. So what do you have? Okay. Do you want to get out of this for the least amount? Okay, agree to this. Okay, shut your mouth and agree to this. And then the guy went back up. He's like, so what I've agreed to do is enter into an agreement with the IRS, and that we'll do this. And she's like, okay, good,
much better,
good, because the judges really don't. I mean, you could see a pro se who's not aware, well, should I fight back or not fight back? Should I push or not push? And they don't really know what's going to happen because they haven't seen it. They haven't seen it in action. And the judge is just like, okay, I don't want to hammer you. All right, I really don't. I'm not going to feel good if I hammer you, but if you keep this up, I will. And then the person's like, okay, that means I really should push, right? Now I really got him on the ropes. No!
There's actually a whole section on the IRS website that explains the penalties that the courts could impose on those who pursue tax cases on frivolous grounds. It includes penalties, possibility of facing criminal prosecution. And I mean, they've got case after case they list as examples to go, dude, we're not screwing around. Look, we've penalized people. We've put people in jail.
Yeah, and I mean, even though that's their definition of frivolous, okay? Whether it's frivolous or not, in real life, I don't care. The IRS is defining it as frivolous, and I'll tell you, the government is the one who collects things. They're the ones with the power. You do not have the power.
We've said it again and again. Just because we do these podcasts and these articles and everything, it doesn't mean we agree with the IRS. It's the opposite. We don't agree with them, but it's like trying to fight Goliath. And we're just doing the little bit we can legally. Here's what we can do.
Right.
Educate people.
Right. This is what's going to happen. If for us just to go into a fantasy land to say, oh, yeah, you don't have to pay, just go in here like this. Well, what happens when, that's funny, that podcast said this was going to happen. But this happened instead. Trust me, it's not us. We won't be the ones.
Yeah.
With the bill, you will be. So, that's the thing. That a lot of these people out there telling you the wrong thing to do, telling you things you want to hear, they're not helping you out. I mean, the reality is that the government decides how powerful the government's going to be.
Yep. So another important thing that we sort of touched on in the first part, but I'd like to mention again because it is so important. Decide, do you really want to go to tax court? It's so important to exhaust all of the other options. Did you try an offer in compromise? Did you try, and there's so many options that people probably don't know about.
Well, and the people know about the options, but they didn't give the factual basis to support what they wanted. That is what's there. It's like, yeah, you could have done an offer in compromise, but all you just said was you threw some stuff at them. You didn't do the work to support what your position is. You just did this much of, you did 5 pages of paperwork. Yeah, you needed to do the 5 pages, and then you needed 200 pages to support what you were saying. To say, well, this is why, this is why, this is why, this is why. Tell your story. And so people just sort of don't go into the level of detail necessary. You're trying to convince an IRS employee to rule in your favor, okay? Let's assume that they want to. Let's assume that, yeah, I want to help this person out. Can they just do that because? No. They need their supervisor's going to make sure that they're doing their job. So you have to. So I mean, a great way to do is like, yep, the IRS guy is my buddy, but I got to be a buddy to him to make sure that he has something to cover his ass when his supervisor comes. Hey, why'd you give that guy a break?
Yep.
And that's what you need to do. If you don't give them the things that they need to cover your ass, they can't rule for you. They just can't. And that's what people always fight in tax court. You fail to give the person grounds so they could rule in your favor, and now you're fighting something in tax court that didn't even need to go to tax court, and you're going to lose. You're going to lose because you didn't exhaust your administrative remedy time and time again.
Yes, I found a great quote on Biz Tax Law. They had a Q&A, and it said, "Do I have a chance of winning in tax court? Does the IRS win every time?" And I thought the response was great. Given the fact that the IRS has already reviewed your case and audit, most tax court cases are settled in favor of the IRS. Unless the IRS auditor is just not listening or being a complete jerk, the IRS should have heard your best case at audit. They already should have heard this.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You don't want to be bringing your best argument up in tax court. That means you lost. Even if it's a great argument, it's like, well, that's fine, but you didn't bring that up to lower. And just one thing about that that quote, I think the author is implying, because he does sound like he knows what he's talking about. The IRS should have heard your best case at audit. I would just say he probably means that also at audit appeal. Mm-hmm. Okay, because the audit, you can get something to really go against you, and this is what you need to know about auditors. They hate appeals. We had ex-IRS auditors working here, and they're like, oh, appeals, I hate those jerks. Always undoing all the hard work we did. Taxpayers really do owe that money. And God, we hate appeals. I'm like, oh, all
Good
right.
to know.
I'm like,
Good to know.
all right, well, we appeal everything here.
All right. Well, something funny about that quote, too. They implied that, if you're dealing with a complete jerk, perhaps this situation could be different.
Correct.
And you may have had a little experience with that.
Yes.
So when we come back, we'll talk about IRSMedic in tax court. Bum, bum, bum.
Claudine, how would you explain the IRS to an enemy?
I would say the IRS is about truth and justice and fairness.
Now, how would you explain the IRS to a friend?
In that case, I would say the IRS is like calm waters with sharks swimming right below the surface.
Can you see the sharks?
You might.
Can you feel the sharks?
They do tend to bite.
Now, let's say you wanted to go into the water. Could you safely go into the water with the sharks in the water as well?
You could safely do it with a shark cage, say.
Now, could IRSMedic be your IRS shark cage?
It's what we do best. IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent and Parent, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. And we're back on Parental Advisory talking about tax court. As you and your dad were sort of going back and forth the other day talking about some experiences you've had, something you said really caught my ear. Excuse me. You were talking about a case IRSMedic had that actually did go to tax court. And you said, in the interest of justice, we went to court. And I really thought that was awesome. Like, you knew that this woman was getting screwed.
Yeah.
And it was worth the fight.
It was worth the fight. It was not we didn't do this because we made money on the case. Not at all. No, it was so bad. We couldn't live with ourselves, and we needed to send a message, to say, you don't push around our firm. You don't do that. You don't push around our clients. Someone hires us. Okay. They're hiring us, and we will go to the bitter end. So I am glad we did it. I am glad it's over, and I am glad we prevailed. This was just such a crazy case of people being beyond jerks. This was somebody who owed some payroll taxes from a farming operation, and this is what happened. And this is, as I figured out the case, this is what was going on. She was getting near the end of her CSEDs on a lot of the debts. Okay, and she was in her nice little partial pay, and so like a lot of stuff was expiring. And it looks like this case was assigned to a revenue officer. However, that revenue officer might not have given the case the priority it needed because of the statute expiring. So it looked like, a shortcut was taken to levy funds prior to when that revenue officer could have levied funds to cover up the fact that they made a mistake. And that's how we won our first CAP appeal, collection appeal program, which is incredibly, that was Might have been the first I ever won, because you never win them, because you basically what you have to do is you have to show that the IRS acted illegally. And this was another one where I was like, and I'm just new to this was something that was a day before Thanksgiving when we took this case, and I'm in on the Friday Friday after Thanksgiving to try to figure out what's going on, piecing things together. I'm like, I know this woman is going to be out of business. She just got everything levied. How do I get it back? And this was another one where a friendly appeals agent said, do you see this notice here? I said, no. She says, yeah, that refresher notice. That's going to kill you. Oh, no, it was an ex-IRS agent. A friend of mine, an ex-revenue officer who worked in New Haven, great guy, helped me out. I'm like, hey, do you see anything here? He goes, yep, didn't send a refresher notice. There's your grounds. Hey, didn't send a refresher notice. You got to send that money back. Oh, yeah, didn't send that refresher notice. Got to send that money back. Won the appeal, came back. Like, oh, my God. Then, so like, okay, let's get into the collection alternative. Like, look, she has the same amount of money she had before. Let's just get into the same thing. She'll pay you, $700 a month. Hey, statute expires. That's the name of the game. No. She can afford to pay, some stupid amount. What are you doing? And I'm just like, what are you doing? You're out of your mind. She doesn't have it. What makes you think she has it? She doesn't have it. And so it was just basically 2 years of bullying back and forth. Then they issued another levy, which we got off too.
Oh my God.
I talked to the territory manager, and then she called. This was on a completely different time zone, so I was a few glasses of wine into the night, and when I took the call, and luckily it was only a few glasses that I was able not to get. What's going on there? Like, is this just like? Are you guys like the biggest F-ups in the world? What are you doing? I mean, you sound very stupid. Mm-hmm. And I didn't say that, but I'm like, you do sound very, very stupid. So it's an area of the country we don't typically, we have people all across the country. So we learned something about this territory. Like, oh boy, they're not like other places. They're not like they are in other places. It's a little bit of a, wild, wild west. Some stories out of here where there was an auditor who, in the same office, there was an auditor in the office who told a gentleman, if you don't have sex with me, I'm going to set you like $1 million. And so she was caught. She was, she's like, wow. Yeah, you're going to have sex with me. And this will go well. If you don't, I don't know.
That's amazing.
And when I read the story, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense for where this is. And that's something you need to, like, that's, I think, something beneficial of seeing how things are done around the country is we can say, what are you guys doing? Mm-hmm. And then the level of appeals, like your appeals officers are stupider than dirt. Oh my God, we got to get it out of here. You guys are just morons. And so that was a nice thing. She's on the West Coast. We filed a tax court petition on the East Coast here in Hartford because we know the people here, and we know what we're dealing with. We know pretty much what we're dealing with, a little bit better of a deal. Mm-hmm. So we had to file a tax court petition because these guys were just out to get her, and it was like, okay, there's no way you're being here. You guys are just being nuts. You have a vendetta. You have a vendetta because you're trying to cover up your incompetence, and this woman's going to pay the price. Mm-hmm. And it's like, guys, you work for the government. You're not going to get fired. Just don't threaten someone to say, if you don't have sex with me, I'm going to charge you.
Right, that's your
Don't
cap.
do that. Right, like just stop short of that, and you'll be fine. Really. So what? Who gives? It's like just for your ego. You're not. Yes. This is not going to impact your performance whatsoever. You always can blame it on like, oh, I didn't get the system didn't notify me. Just say that. No one's going to care. So it's like, why are you guys making this so friggin' personal? And it's like, all right, well, we'll make it personal too. So we filed a petition that was not cost effective for us. And we filed it. And the first thing we get back is the IRS counsel. And again, IRS counsel, same office that my dad called for the guy who gave us the advice. Hey, go to the taxpayer advocate, okay? We get this guy who's like, all right, well, I just want to let you know we don't settle anything. Okay.
Wow.
All right. So the first thing he does is he files a motion to dismiss. Like, oh, God. All right, you're wasting our time because guess what? We did exhaust our administrative remedies. We didn't make a technical error. We're under 90 days. Learn that, right? The motion to dismiss was denied, which was good. Okay. Then comes a motion for summary judgment. It's like, oh, Jesus, dude. You're not going to win. You're not going to win the motions for summary judgment. We're too good for that. We're an actual law firm. This is not some pro se litigant you could beat up on. We're covered. All you're doing is making, a bunch of work for us. So we fight the motion for summary judgment. We win. So now he goes, because now next is trial. Because I'm like, these are bad facts. IRS does not want these facts out there. I mean, you're going to see a really crappily run office and supervision that's just sort of bad. I'm like, all right, you want, because that's when we just we don't negotiate. I'm like, all right, but did you take a look at these facts? You might not want to. This might not be one of the cases you want to get out to an opinion. So after we won this motion for summary judgment, he goes, oh, so let's talk about a settlement.
You know what? He was probably just trying to wear you down. Yeah, thought you would just quit.
Right, just and that's what he can do. And because here's the thing, okay, they have a lot of cases they got to get through, okay, and 95% of the cases they can get through exactly that way. Motion to dismiss, not work. Motion for summary judgment. That's the way for them to clear it out. Okay, and it works because people fail to do all the work necessary to get a winning tax court petition. Because when you have a winning tax court petition, you don't win it because right there you just say settle. So you guys wanted a CNC. Yeah, well, I think we could do that. So why would we go to trial when we just got everything we wanted in a settlement?
Right.
So it's like, okay, so I guess we're done here.
So I guess we win.
We won. Okay, and that was it. And
talk about exhausting all of your administrative options.
Yeah. And so even though, the guy was really a jerk to begin with, and then he was, but it's like he had a reason to be a jerk because he has to deal with nonsense petitions that are wasting his time. It's like, dude, you shouldn't even be here. Why didn't you just do this instead? And, they can't say that. They said, you dummy, if you do this, they could have ruled for your favor, but you didn't people don't show up for hearings. They don't give them the right things. They just sit there and say, I'm going to wait, Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination, just all this stuff. It's like, just do this. We could have solved that. So you could see it's a really frustrating job because you're not arguing, you're just, most of the time you're doing the same old. You're not arguing a novel legal issue where, you love those. You're like, oh, this is really interesting. I found something here. Not a lot of that. It's just more of nonsense of people who are just, God, you're wasting your time. If you only knew how this really worked, if you only talked to an attorney, you would see there's a better solution to this than tax court. And that's often true. So really, you want to use tax court in a couple of cases where the IRS is being jerks.
Yep.
And then also where there is a novel area of law that you want to push back on and you want to maybe make new law and that it's worth the gamble. Those are really the two types of cases where tax court can really work for you.
And jerks or not, don't you have to prove they're doing something illegal?
There you go.
So
right. So they could be
jerks.
as jerky as they want, but if you're not showing, hey, look, you're not following the IRM. You're going outside here. You're not paying attention to this notice. You're missing this. You need to show that. So them being jerky to you, that's not enough.
No,
that's not enough. Right. The taxpayer bill of rights is not legally operative.
No,
it's just a bunch of words.
Nope. All right. So tax court. We'll sum up and say, ditch the tax protester arguments.
Yep. Give it the old heave ho.
Exhaust everything else.
And exhaust things you don't have.
Yes, because pretty much the only time you're going to go is when you are 100% sure you're going to win.
And you have it so well documented.
And you probably want representation at that point.
Oh yeah, you're so well documented, or you just got to you have a novel legal issue that might go your way.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.